Recently, the Netflix live-action adaptation of Avatar the Last Airbender joined the ranks of the many shows that have gotten a live-action remake and along with them an entire story facelift. And this has been a trend since I was a kid. I've been watching movies and shows that I loved that were animated get turned into live-action remakes that really missed the bar. And I really want to make a video on it because it doesn't seem like it's slowing down and it's pissing me off. So to talk about this, I think there's no better place to start than two live-action shows that actually released in the last year. I am of course talking about the Netflix live adaptations of Avatar the Last Airbender and One Piece. Now, on their own, these are two beloved series, and for a good reason. These series are heralded to be some of the greatest just stories told of all time. They've got incredible world building, incredible characters. They're shows that whether you're a kid or you're an adult, you can sit down, watch them, and really enjoy them. And I really think that comparing these two actually paints a pretty perfect picture of what people are doing wrong with all of these adaptations. So if you haven't seen Avatar the Last Airbender, let's talk about the pros and cons. I'll start with the cons because that list is very long. The show felt like the people that made it hadn't even watched the original series. They had plot points of the first season that they definitely hit, but a lot of ones that they missed. For instance, for those of you that don't know, Aang is the Avatar, and he gets sealed away in an iceberg for 100 years, and that's the whole plot of the series. Sorry, spoiler alert. But his motivations for running away before he gets sealed up in this iceberg are completely different in the live adaptation, and it completely ruins his character development. In the animated show, Aang leaves the Air Temple after learning that he is the Avatar. He doesn't want to accept this responsibility. He's scared of that future, so he runs away. In the series then, when Aang is awoken 100 years later, he's left with this guilt of he ran away from this responsibility, and maybe if he didn't run away, maybe if he wasn't so scared, things would have turned out differently. He would have been there to save his whole temple. All of the friends and mentors he's had throughout his life be completely obliterated. Jesus. In the Netflix live adaptation, he's just like, oh man, there's a lot of responsibility going on with this. But it'll be fine. Let's go for a walk, Appa. They leave, they fly away, they don't go for a walk. And then when it picks up 100 years later, we don't have that foundation to really build out Aang's character. So then when there's a little apprehension towards the responsibility of being the Avatar, it just doesn't feel natural. He was already chill with it. Meanwhile, in One Piece, there are a lot of things that they don't sacrifice. I mean, the main character is literally made of rubber. It's almost impossible to do fight scenes with him stretching his body all over the place and not make them look cheesy. But that ability to stretch that Luffy has, he's like stretching his smiles out, they weren't gonna cut those out for the sake of it maybe looking cheesy. In fact, what the One Piece live action does very well is it kind of leans into the cheesiness. Whereas in Avatar the Last Airbender, it's evident they put a lot of effort into making it feel like a very serious show.
It is our time.
When you watch One Piece, it's very evident that it's just fun. You're in for a good time. They've adapted the things you loved and they've kept in mind the things that mattered. So when you're watching these line deliveries that maybe are a little corny,
So that's where it goes.
or some of the outfits look like fairly good cosplays but kind of bad Hollywood costumes, you kind of shrug it off. You're okay with them sacrificing a little bit to really make sure they get the meat of the story, the spirit of the story that they're telling. But with Avatar, it's the complete opposite. A lot of the bending in the show looks incredible, and that I think is the only pro. Even though some of the fight scenes are a little slow, it's nothing compared to the movie adaptation M. Night Shyamalan did when I was a kid. I mean, there are shots of like huge fire-bending power waves just obliterating things. There are shots with the water benders bending the water up and shooting it into the sky and blocking fireballs. Like, it looks so sick. But the problem is they really leaned into making it feel so serious. And so when you do that and you cut out a lot of the spirit of the show, some of the key character developments for the sake of moving the pace along or whatever reason you may have, anytime the special effects don't look good or any times the script is a bit lacking, it just feels shitty. If you're gonna try and convince me that, okay, we removed some of the cheesiness because it's hard to convert animated shows and voice acting into a live action setting. If you're telling me you sacrifice that so that you can make it more real world and gritty, then any of those things, any cheesiness, any bad dialogue, it really rises to the surface and makes it look bad. It's like if you're making super realistic art and instead of like a turkey in the scene, just that piece is where you traced your hand and did like one of the kid turkey drawings that you do around Thanksgiving. So it's like, yeah, the rest of the painting may look good, but it's so evident that that's bad and it sticks out like a sore thumb. However, in the One Piece live action, scenes where Luffy's stretching looks a little weird or the lines are bad, again, you look over it. You're just having fun. It's not taking itself too seriously. So if I'm gonna summarize all the cons of Avatar the Last Airbender, the show, because let's face it, we're not just talking about that show here. You don't have time for that. This video would be way too long. The show sacrifices a lot of what made the original material special for, I guess, the trade-off of making it more appealing to a wider audience, which is insane because that show is one of the most widely appealing shows I've ever seen. Directly countered by things like the Netflix adaptation of One Piece, which do the opposite. They're willing to sacrifice some things, making it look cheesy, things like that, to make sure they really capture the spirit of the show. And I think that's the problem with all adaptations, because I didn't even want to go here, but what about the movie adaptations? Y'all remember the Dragon Ball live action adaptation? I hope you don't. It did really bad at the box office. It's truly atrocious. I won't get into all the bad things, but here's a clip. We've already referenced the Avatar the Last Airbender movie from M. Night Shyamalan. And what both of those movies had in common was they were taking this source material that already appealed to such a wide audience. I mean, these are some of the most popular shows. Avatar the Last Airbender, One Piece, Dragon Ball. And they're like, no, we need to make it more widely appealing. We need to make it look like the movies that are being released right now. And it just, you sacrifice so much of why these movies are good to, I guess, make the trailers look okay-ish. And I think the biggest offender was when they take shows and they try to make them into movies, like the Dragon Ball movie. They also did it with the Deathnote series. And this is probably the peak of my rage with live action adaptions. I was in college when this released on Netflix, and I stayed up. I think it released at like 2 or 3 a.m. my time. I had school the next day at 8 a.m. and I stayed up to watch it because I was like, no, this is hype. And the casting was really good. It looks like they spent all their money on Willem Dafoe playing Ryuk. And every scene he was in, super cool. Everything else about that movie, and I mean everything else, truly atrocious. If you're looking for a bad movie to watch this weekend, I can't point you in a better direction.
Shall we begin?
There is not a better example of some studio, some writer, some showrunner completely butchering the source material for the sake of making it new or more appealing and it just doing horribly. And I referenced a lot of things that released in like the early 2000s up until the present. This isn't a new problem. There was a lot of hope when the One Piece live action series did really well. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was a very successful adaptation. People thought, thank God, the studios are finally letting real fans adapt these into shows, and it's turning out very well. And then they do it again with Avatar the Last Airbender, and I'm so mad. I'm so angry. I decided to make this video when I was on Twitter, and I saw that it was announced that we're not only getting another adaptation of Deathnote, this one as a show, it won't be better. It's that I don't think that's gonna help. But we're also getting an adaptation of Naruto. We've seen what they've done with the material we love, and I don't know why, but they are not getting the memo that changing this material fundamentally is a bad thing. So the end-all be-all of this video, I guess I could more call it a rant. I'll give you a moral of the story so you don't feel cheated out, is that if we're gonna keep doing these movie adaptions, we need to make sure that it's being helmed by real fans of the show. A lot of people didn't know this, but the Avatar the Last Airbender live action adaptation actually had the original creators tied to it until they left for, and this should have been the red flag for Netflix to cancel it, creative differences. If you're show running a new show about someone's original source material and they're like, hey, we have creative differences enough that I'll leave, I don't understand where you could be like, but I'm right. So the mission that we all have, I guess, is to not watch these shows, because despite Avatar the Last Airbender's adaptation being so bad, it did so well numbers-wise, apparently. So I don't know. I'm at a loss. I don't want to keep consuming drivel. I don't want Naruto and Death Note being adapted into these shitty remakes that will just make me feel so depressed that we live in a capitalist world where profit comes over spirit. Wait, the creators of Stranger Things are the ones doing the Death Note show? Oh, but I love Stranger Things, so that's gonna be so good. Surely it's not gonna be bad. And you know what? If that's not bad, I bet Naruto's gonna be really good. You know what, guys? Actually, I forgive them. These are gonna be good. Trust me.